This video is brought to you by the weirdest, grayest lighting possible. I have no clue why I look so vampire-esque on camera. This is caused by the time of day that I'm recording at. Bear with me, I have no clue what this is about. Also, in case you're wondering why my hair is so incredibly greasy, I'm gonna go hit a workout after this, so it didn't really make sense to shower beforehand. Most people complain about things now and then. I think we all know that that is normal to a degree. And I think most of us do it ourselves. You probably complain every once in a while. Most of you probably know people who, complain a little more, complain a little less about the things going on in their lives. And usually the people around you will have, phases where they complain more or less. So they might have a time at which they seem very overwhelmed by the stuff going on in their life. They might complain a little more to you. Maybe you have some friends who almost never complain about anything, who are just very chipper, seem very positive about life. But I think probably most of you know that one person that always complains. And this person usually seems like they really don't want any help with their problems. Because typically when someone complains about something, they kind of want you to give them support, but usually also they feel overwhelmed with a problem, right? And so maybe they also want you to help them think of solutions, right? Help them realize maybe the problem isn't as terrible as they might have thought initially. At least that's what I try to do for my friends. But this one person, and I'm pretty sure most of you know someone who's kind of like this, just always seems to complain. And when you try to help them, they don't really like it. They almost seem kind of bothered by the fact that you're trying to help them. They seem like they like to complain. And when you offer a solution to the problem they're talking about, either they try to pick holes in your solution, or another great option is they will retreat to an even bigger problem. So they talk about a specific problem and you offer them a solution, and they kind of backstep and say, well, it's really caused by this bigger problem. So now you have to come up with a solution for a much grander problem that maybe it's kind of hard to find a immediate solution to. This might be because the law works a certain way or a certain institution works a certain way. So they will essentially backstep until they have reached a problem to complain about that you can't solve off the top of your head. It's almost like they really just enjoy wallowing in self-pity. And it gets to the point with this person where, it feels like almost every conversation is just about them complaining about stuff. And anyone who, maybe complains about stuff once in a while, which I think most of you are, but doesn't complain about stuff all of the time, and really generally likes a positive outlook on life more. Doesn't mean you always have it, but it really kind of feels more satisfying, more positive when you really think about it. You will find this incredibly annoying at some point. Now the question is, why is this person so annoying? At the end of the day, after all, they are complaining about problems that seem to be very real to them. And you are friends with them, so why should it be annoying to you to be there for them and talk about their problems with them. I think the difference between, your typical person who complains once in a while and this person that always complains is this person would rather cope than do the hard thing in any situation. Now, I think most of you know or have probably seen memes like this. We all cope. We all cope about stuff. That's the truth. But some of us try to reflect on that, try to improve, try to get past that, and maybe, cope a little less or cope regarding like small things. But then there are people who would just rather cope regarding everything. And what you might have realized talking to this person, and maybe you've already kind of, started avoiding this person, or it's gotten to the point where you don't really want to spend time with them anymore. Maybe you're not at that point yet, but you're starting to realize, man, this doesn't really feel like a proper friendship. The thing is, these conversations feel like they're incredibly one-sided. Like this person is the only person talking. And in and of itself, there's no problem with a friendship where one person talks more than the other. And in some cases, this person might even ask you questions or let you talk for a little bit. But again, they won't accept your solutions that you might offer. What they want you to do is they want you to support them in their cope. That's what feels so annoying about interacting with these types of people. They don't really want to talk about you and the things going on in your life. They might ask you a question to initiate a conversation, but this will usually be a question about either a topic that they can then talk about themselves and, go on to complain about all their problems, or at the very least, it's a topic that is closely related to another topic that they are then going to go on and complain about. So anything they might ask you about is really something they have an issue with themselves and want to complain about, and they are just trying to get the conversation running, or they are immediately going to make a transition to a closely related topic and then complain about that. I think most of you can relate. Most of you probably know a person that's kind of like this, and it can be very annoying. And many of us can be a little bit like this every once in a while. The thing is, people who always do this, the reason they do is their coping has gone so far that it isn't enough anymore for them to, take their own medicine. They are coping so much that they have to involve other people. They actually need your help to cope. They need you to confirm to them that they are correct in their assessment that situation XYZ is incredibly unfair. Which, since they are always complaining, is every situation, obviously. When I joined university for the second time, obviously I'm not fresh out of school. When I graduated high school, I started going to university. I started studying computer science. It wasn't really my thing. I didn't really enjoy it. I also found something else that I really enjoyed. Dropped out, spent the last couple of years working, and reapplied for a different subject at a different university. And I've started studying again now, more so out of personal interest than, specifically looking for some kind of career. I really want to do something that doesn't really correlate with the degree I'm going to have, but it's an interesting subject to study. When I joined university, now as a grown man who, has a little bit of life experience, obviously not a ton, I'm a young guy, but a little bit. I've worked full-time in the past, I've worked a few different jobs, I've also been self-employed, I've worked very, very hard for short periods of time. There have been periods where I have made a lot of money, but I also worked a ton. So I've experienced a few different things. And when I joined university, I was shocked at the amount of people who were the way I just described. And interestingly enough, I'm not talking about just kids, 18, 19-year-olds, fresh out of high school. I'm talking about adults like me, people my age, people in some cases who are even a little older than me. And I was, as I said, quite shocked, because I felt like almost every conversation I had with people, which were very brief because I quickly found them very annoying, was like this, was people complaining about stuff. It was legitimately people who had just started going to university, who had personally chosen to go to university to study the subject they were going to study, already complaining about, how hard it's going to be. Already talking about how, oh no, this test is going to be so hard. Oh, I have all this work to do. Stuff like that. It was bizarre to me. And this might sound kind of mean, but seem to have something in my eye. All right. Something greasy, apparently. Oh well. I just ate eggs and bacon, so apparently I got some grease on my eyelid. Anyways, where were we? This might sound a little harsh, but this is actually the main reason I haven't really interacted with the uni people a lot, even though they try to. This might sound a little cocky in turn, but these people actually tried to socialize with me a lot. And I feel like the more I avoid them, the more they try to socialize with me. So it's not like they didn't try to socialize with me. But genuinely, the conversations these people tried to have with me made me so uncomfortable, because all they were talking about were all of these problems they apparently had, that I didn't really feel like talking to them. There's been like one guy who I, talk to a little more, who I hang out with a little more at university, who's kind of chill. And there are a couple of younger guys who I've met who are actually, interestingly enough, a lot less like this than some of the people my age. I don't know, maybe they are into self-improvement. Maybe they just haven't been hit by a lot of the harsh aspects of life yet. I don't really know. But I found that kind of interesting, that some of the 18, 19-year-olds who, clearly are fresh out of school, they were very positive and like very motivated and engaged and not complaining about all of these things that are so terrible about the subject and the university they personally chose themselves. I'm sorry. It's just very bizarre to me. And as you can tell from me laughing, right? I can't really take these people seriously because everything is a huge struggle to them and must be shared. It's actually interesting to me now that I really think about it. I'm not sure I've talked to a single person at university who has really shared like their long-term goals with me. Who's been like, I have this drive, I have this purpose that I follow. This is my dream. This is what I'm working for. I feel like most of the people are just kind of there. And this is, by the way, not something I wrote down. I just realized this while talking. These people just seem to kind of drift through life. And apparently, everything in life is a huge struggle, especially attending the university you chose for yourself as a grown person. Now, I don't want to be too mean. Chances are you do this yourself sometimes. I definitely do this at times. Especially when you are kind of in a group setting where everyone is sort of complaining about things. You can't really avoid being there. You have to work on something with these people. It can be kind of easy to, get in on the complaining. Totally. Even if you don't do this, you probably do it internally. Let's be honest here. Maybe you're not a super extroverted person. You're perhaps incredibly introverted. Maybe you're socially awkward. But even if you're not out there complaining about things to other people, you're probably doing it internally. There's this typical compromise between what you should do, like the conscious you, this is what I'm supposed to do. Your potential, right? This is what I would do if I was the ideal me. And what your brain, usually like your subconscious, not even your subconscious, kind of the monkey part of your brain that is, completely impulse driven, what that part of your brain tells you. So, this is very common. Let's say you have a rough start into the day. Something kind of sucked. You just got up on the wrong foot. Whatever it may be, right? Maybe you're on your way to work and the subway is late. And you get to work late, and then maybe your boss yells at you. Whatever. Maybe it's the same thing with school. Maybe you just get up and you feel terrible. It might not even be anything specific, but you just feel really, really terrible. Or you you get up and, I don't know, you get in the shower and you bump your head on something. And it hurts like hell, and that is your start into the day. Whatever it may be, you maybe finish like 2 out of 5 or 6 tasks that you had to do in the day. Maybe you've already finished these and then something bad happens. And you'll say to yourself, I've already worked hard. Like I've gotten something done. I'll just do X for 5 minutes. I'll just go on Instagram for 5 minutes. I'll just, watch some YouTube. I'll just have a quick meal, and while I do that, I'll watch my TV show or whatever. And you end up not getting everything done. Your brain will provide you with cope, and you will just keep telling yourself that BS, because it's easier than accepting the fact that despite that rough start into the day, despite that thing happening that kind of sucked, despite you just not feeling great that day, you should have done these things. And you could have done these things. But because you told yourself, or because your monkey brain told you, hey, you've already finished 2 tasks. You've already worked hard. Let's just have a short break. Just to feel a little better. Because the day started terrible. Because I don't feel great. Let's just watch some YouTube. And then suddenly it's like 2 hours later. Or maybe you watch a YouTube video and it's not that long, but afterwards you're kind of like, now I don't really want to do what I gotta do. That's what I mean by this typical compromise. This is a classic example of that compromise between you, the really like conscious, present, proper you, and your monkey brain. And, the next thing you know, you've had an entire bad week, a bad month, maybe even, etc. And at the end of the day, you might look back on that week and say, hey, look, I got these things done. Because you're still coping. But the truth is, there's this whole shopping list of things that you were actually supposed to do, and you didn't do them. And you know why. If you were honest with yourself, you would know the truth. The truth is, you had that one rough day, that one day where you got up on the wrong foot, and it kind of rubbed you the wrong way. And instead of powering through and keeping your drive, you let it get you down. Suddenly you are confused. Things are not going your way. Maybe not after a week. Again, you might look back at that week and be like, yeah, I got all of this stuff done. Great. Maybe after a month. Maybe after a couple of months. Maybe after 2 years, 3 years, you're sitting there thinking, I'm really dissatisfied with where I'm at. What the hell happened? I was doing what I was supposed to do, wasn't I? I got those 2 tasks done. Not specifically those 2 tasks on that day, but, generally speaking. And you don't really know what happened. It was that one small moment that you let slip. And that kind of told your monkey brain, hey, here's someone who's ready to compromise. So you compromise the next day and the day after that, etc. And it just kept going. And now you're sitting there with, a bunch of problems, and you have no clue where they came from. Maybe you even start complaining to your friends about them, right? So that's where we kind of connect the whole thing. Or maybe it wasn't that, you had a bad start of the day. Maybe your day is going great, okay? Maybe your week is going great. And then something really bad happens, or really annoying, really disheartening. And this can be something truly terrible, okay? Got some bacon stuck between my teeth. This can be something really terrible. I'm going to go hardcore here. A family member died. Okay, your grandpa died. Oof. That's a big one. It can be something smaller even, but still terrible. Maybe your cat died. Still, very tough on a lot of people. And what you're going to say to yourself, or rather what your monkey brain is going to say to yourself, because your monkey brain sees this, and it sees an opportunity, and it's going to say, I'm just going to take a day off. Just a day. To be with myself. To enjoy myself. to regather my thoughts, whatever it may be. Don't get me wrong, this is not me saying you should never take a day off from anything, okay? But the truth is, this is your monkey brain. Your monkey brain wants you to take a day off. Always. Like, at any point, okay? So it sees an opportunity here. Because you take that day off, and you enjoy yourself, and you just do what feels good. But really, your monkey brain wants you to wallow in self-pity. Because it's easier than dealing with the fact that this was something that was really tough on me, but I shouldn't let it get me down. This is a tough experience. This is something that, has impacted me on an emotional level. But I shouldn't let it get me down. Because doing what feels good, dealing with this thing that happened in a way that's just, indulging in stuff, that's not balancing yourself out. That's just coping. Again, sounds kind of harsh. I picked a very harsh example. I did so on purpose. I could have picked something where maybe you would have gone along with me a lot more easily. But this was actually on purpose. How does wasting your time help you get over something? And I'm not talking about, actually dealing with trauma that something might have caused. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about wallowing in self-pity. I'm talking about indulging in a bunch of stuff. Going drinking. Just locking yourself in your apartment, ordering a bunch of fast food, and smoking weed for like a week straight. And not doing anything. Except, maybe play like video games and watch YouTube. How's that going to help you? It's actually going to make you feel worse, probably. Because now not only did something terrible happen, but it was also followed by you not doing anything. So you've now been unproductive in addition to the fact that something bad has already happened to you. I thought about calling this video, "It's Always Your Fault." That's more catchy, more provocative. It's a shorter title, more flashy. But I actually decided against that because I thought it was too misleading, too clickbaity. Clickbaity, not in the sense that a title of a video cannot be interesting and intriguing, but clickbaity in the sense that it's not actually true to what I was going to say in the video and what I am telling you right now. Because the truth is, bad things that happen are not always your fault. There are a lot of instances where something bad happens to you and it's not your fault at all. It just happens. Regarding that example I made before, with the rough start into the day. The day where, you got up and you just felt terrible. Maybe your neighbor was really loud. Maybe your neighbor stayed up late. Maybe he had friends over. They partied. They listened to loud music. You have to get up early the next day, go to school or go to work or whatever it may be. And that's what caused that rough start into that first day that then cascaded into a bad week, maybe even a bad month, bad months, plural, etc. In the second example, where I, already chose a specific example, the bad thing that happened probably was out of your hands. Unless you somehow caused the accident that resulted in your grandpa's death. Chances are your grandpa just died because he was old or had some disease. Right? So usually this very, very terrible thing that happens, it's either very clearly our fault or it was kind of out of our hands. It just occurred. Way of the world. Talking about fault, now we got the bells again. Perfect. Talking about fault isn't really going to get you anywhere. It's an infinite chain. Because a lot of things are caused at the end of the day by the laws of physics, by the laws of nature. Cause is really a tricky thing. And so laying blame, trying to find out who's at fault, also kind of tricky. I'm not saying you shouldn't blame people for treating you badly, but really, if you go deep, if you want to go deep, and I wouldn't recommend you go down that rabbit hole, probably there are reasons for why they treated you badly. There's a good chance. So trying to find out who's at fault really isn't going to lead you anywhere. But even when something is not your fault, it's still your responsibility. You're an adult. You're a grown-ass person. Everyone has problems. Your problems, the stuff you are complaining about, isn't special. I would bet you $100, $1,000. There's someone in your immediate vicinity who has it worse than you. You might be the most annoying case of what I mentioned at the beginning of this video, right? You might be the kind of person that any conversation is only about you and your problems. This might be you. So all you really talk about is your problems. I bet you there is someone you know, at least as an acquaintance, who has it worse than you. Even if you don't know about it. Probably the case. In many cases, really one of the reasons I'm saying this is a lot of people who complain a lot really lack perspective about the world and about the fact that a lot of their problems aren't that big. But yeah, even if you have some problems, that seem very grand to you, chances are there's someone who has it worse. Everyone has problems. You're an adult. You are responsible for dealing with those problems. That's kind of your job. At least if you accept it. The world isn't fair. At least, not in the sense you're thinking about. What I mean by that is, it is kind of fair in the way that it does generally reward people who deal with their problems. You can still get hit by a bus, don't get me wrong, but you can severely decrease the chances of getting hit by a bus if you do certain things. And completely unrelated to this random example that I just gave, generally, wallowing in self-pity and, constantly thinking about the fact that the world isn't fair, in the sense that, not everyone is treated equally, or that things can randomly happen to you, what is that going to do for you? The world is fair in the sense that it will, generally speaking, reward you for doing the hard work. even if it takes a long time. But if you stay disciplined and stick to something, you are almost never going to regret it at the end of the day. Even if you find out there might have been a better way, you're still going to have learned something from having the discipline to stick to something, to pull through. Investing effort, dealing with trouble, that's not usually what people regret. People regret not doing stuff. People regret wallowing in self-pity, moping around, not doing anything, not getting anything done. Even though they might not admit this to themselves because they prefer to cope. The world is fair in the sense that random things can happen to anyone. Doesn't mean they do, right? Let's be honest. But they can. It's just that some people choose to deal with this reality differently than you might do. You can accept this fact because really you can't change it. Or you can be mad about it. But whether or not you choose one or the other, this fact is going to remain true. And the question is, do you still want to try to be in control of your life and go somewhere, or not? Moping around is not going to help you. It's really that simple. Would you rather whine about your problems or do something about them? And maybe actually fix them? And I'm going to tell you right now, there are going to be more problems along the way. Down the road, you're going to run into new problems. And you're going to fix those. If you are willing to. And you might think, well, that sounds kind of bad, really. That sounds like it kind of sucks. But does it, though? Most of you probably play video games. Let's be real here, okay? What are you doing in a video game? What are you doing in an RPG? You're dealing with problems. And you dealing with problems levels up your character. At the end of the game, if you boil it down to dealing with problems, you are still doing exactly the same thing you were doing at level 1. Okay, if you're playing The Witcher 3, at level 1, you were fighting stuff with your sword. At level 50, you are fighting stuff with your sword. I could come up with a ton of game examples here, but you know what I'm talking about. You're still doing the same thing, but it doesn't feel the same. It's grander. You have progressed. You're not at the same point you were before. And this is going to feel way more significant in real life. Yes, you're always going to deal with problems. But would you rather deal with really stupid problems every day that, if you were actually honest with yourself, could easily be fixed? Or maybe at least comparatively easily fixed? Or would you like to deal with grand problems? Movie problems. You know, your arch nemesis. I'm getting dramatic here, but you know what I'm saying. The adventure of a lifetime, the challenge of a lifetime, the enemy of a lifetime, whatever it may be. I think most of us would like an epic life. Would like our life to, turn into an epic tale. But that's never going to happen if you let the small problems get you down and you cope instead of dealing with them. You're not going to level up unless you kill those enemies and get those XP. Anytime I've been in a really bad place, what actually helped me most is holding myself accountable. And this is not something that I immediately realized. This is something I had to learn over the years. And this is something I realize again and again when I get into stupid situations, and then at the end realize I was just not dealing with some of the issues I saw along the way. I should have seen these things and dealt with them immediately. The only reason I got myself into this really fickle situation where now I have to deal with an overwhelming amount of problems is because I didn't deal with small problems or singular problems that might be a little bigger when they popped up. Again, not everything is your fault. Actually, a lot of things are not your fault. But if you're really honest, if you're really, really honest with yourself, you know there's probably something you could have done better. Even if that is just not engaging with a person. It can be as simple as that. Maybe someone was really terrible to you, but you chose to let that person be terrible to you. Or something really bad happened, but you still chose how to deal with that. How to deal with that thing happening to you. How to deal with your emotions. That was still your choice. So even if something happens and you might say, well, this was totally out of my hands. Yes, it might have been. But what wasn't out of your hands was, how am I going to deal with this? How am I going to engage with this? And you know this is true. If you're really honest with yourself, you know this is true. You just want to avoid this fact in many cases. And again, so have I in the past. But I always come back to this. There are things, if I'm being honest with myself, that I could have done. Even in situations where I feel like, dude, the world is just out to get me. Maybe it is, okay? But I could have fought it. There are ways in which I could have, just dealt with these problems way earlier than I did. I had to deal with some really shitty people over the years. This is not just one particular person. I've had a lot of people in my life who I've had issues with. But I often entered their shitty games. And there have been multiple phases in my life where I look back and I thought, man, I was kind of an asshole during this period of time. And at the end of the day, if I'm being honest, it wasn't really my fault because these people were treating me badly. And so I essentially became a bad person to match that energy. But it was my responsibility. I could have said, damn, this is just a bad person, and left. And I didn't. I've had some hard times, but the way I dealt with them often made it worse. In the sense that I didn't deal with them. In the sense that I coped. And, in many cases, it took me a long while to realize, dude, what am I doing? I'm just wasting my time. Just get back into what you should be doing, what you love doing, what you are supposed to be doing. You know what that is. That doesn't mean what happens to you or what happened to you was deserved. Okay, I want to really emphasize this. It doesn't mean you're as bad as the people that influence you to become a bad person. It doesn't mean you shouldn't tell someone off for behaving terribly towards you. But pitying yourself for these things happening, that's not going to help you. Realize that, yes, random things, random terrible things happen, but they do happen to anyone and everyone. That's part of the game. That's part of the rules. And once you realize this, and once you accept these rules, things are going to be a lot easier. Realize that, yes, there's shitty people out there. But engaging with that, allowing them to drag you down and make you a worse person as well, that's not going to help you. You want to get down in the mud and mess around with these people? What is that going to do for you long term? You think it's going to give you satisfaction? Let me tell you, it does not give you satisfaction to try and get people back who are being dickheads. It doesn't. What gives you satisfaction is achieving goals, doing something with your life. The moment you accept responsibility for what happens to you, it feels like you've gained insane control over your life. And again, this is not necessarily one singular moment. You have to remind yourself of these things again and again and again. I have to remind myself of these things constantly. Not constantly, but, every once in a while. Especially regarding big things. Sometimes you don't really see a problem coming as clearly. You still could have detected it, if you're being honest. But maybe your subconscious was kind of telling you, this is maybe not a good idea, and you were kind of like, screw you. But every time you accept responsibility for what happens to you is going to be magical. Because it's so incredibly freeing. Once you're responsible for your problems, you get to change things. If you push away responsibility for the things that happen to you, you also don't get to change them. So you're kind of stuck there like a child who is, on this really boring trip or really annoying trip with their parents. Imagine you're a 6-year-old child and your parents take you to this museum that you don't care about at all, and it's boring as hell, but you're just not able to change anything. You're not able to do what you actually want to do. You're not a child anymore. You're an adult. You get to change things about your life, but you have to accept responsibility. Only once you say, this is my job and my job only. It's not the world's responsibility. It's not someone else's responsibility. And things are probably not going to change if I just sit back and mope around. You get to change things. And that's kind of awesome, bro. Real talk. That's amazing. I'm not saying it won't be hard work. Probably will, depending on the problem we're talking about here. And you know this one, really annoying part about your life. This one thing that's been bothering you for months, years maybe. You know exactly what I'm talking about. It'll be hard work. It'll be a big step maybe to deal with that. But you'll get somewhere. You will progress. You will earn those XP. And you will level up. You need to get rid of the things that caused those problems. And you might be saying, well, some of those things I can't get rid of. Maybe something is the law. Maybe this is just a part of the institution. that I'm in. Back away. If you can't fix a problem by being proactive, back away. That's still an active choice. That's still you taking responsibility. Maybe the university degree you're studying for, you hate studying for it. Ask yourself the serious question. Back away and be honest with yourself. Do I want this degree? Do I need this degree? What do I need it for? Is this worth struggling the way I am struggling now? Taking all this hassle? And the answer is either yes or no. And you are going to know the answer. And if the answer is yes, those struggles aren't that bad. They are just what you gotta do. Hard work. It's the same as going to the gym to get jacked. Stop complaining about, I've got all these exams and they are so hard. Just do it. You want the degree, don't you? You want to go where you want to go. So you got to do the work that's involved. Or you might say, the reason this sucks so much is because it feels like it's actually not worth it. Maybe that's the case. Drop out then. I'm not encouraging you to just drop out of university just like that, right? Think about this. But if you're actually being honest with yourself and you don't care at all about what you're studying for, why are you doing it? Just because it's easier than not doing it and actually working on your life and choosing a path that you are happy with? Let me tell you, okay, I've had some hard times over the years since I dropped out of university the first time I started studying. But I'm really glad about it. I don't regret it one bit because I didn't enjoy what I was studying. There were some parts about it that were incredibly boring. Really, where I was going with this degree was also not where I wanted to be going. And I had to be honest with myself about that. And I worked on, getting where I want to be, following the purpose I want to follow. And now I'm studying something that I find incredibly interesting. And it doesn't feel hard at all to do the work that I have to do for the subject I'm studying right now. Not because it's not still work, but because I am actually interested in what I'm studying, and because I actually want to get better. I want to learn this stuff. So it doesn't bother me. I would never complain about this stuff. I chose it for myself because it's what I want. And shouldn't that be the case for you? Realizing these problems, or realizing what these problems are, rather, and identifying them, clearly, is also going to help you avoid them in the future. Because things do repeat themselves. Maybe with some slight differences, but chances are you're probably going to run into similar problems in the future. Think of it kind of like this. You fought a boss in a video game, and the first time you fought this boss, maybe it was really hard. And you fought this boss countless times until you realized, hey, there's this one specific strat that works really well against this boss. Apart from the fact that maybe you just learned the moveset of this boss, the way it moves, the way it attacks, the specific attacks it has, when you can attack it, when you can't attack it, all of that stuff. But maybe you also learned a specific strategy, a specific way of cheesing this boss that maybe makes it really easy. Cheesing, for those of you that don't play video games, is essentially not fighting someone properly, but using some cheeky strategy to defeat a boss in a very easy kind of way. In many video games, you will fight the same bosses multiple times. It's just that maybe they have more life points. or they deal more damage. But the move set is kind of the same, the boss kind of looks the same, it's essentially the same boss. And the boss is not going to be that hard, because even though he has more HP, even though he does more damage, you know how he moves. You know how to, what strategy to use against him, how to cheese him. And it's essentially the same in real life. Once you've dealt with a problem that seemed really big to you, once you've realized how to deal with this problem, a similar problem, or essentially the same problem, might come up in the future, but you are going to be able to either avoid it completely or deal with it very easily. Isn't that worthwhile? Like, think about that. You have not just invested all of this hard work into dealing with this problem once. You've also gained that experience for the future, and future problems of this same type are going to be easier to deal with. That's awesome. The reason why many people won't do this, in some cases, it does require you to actually change your life in major ways. I know that can be hard. Very hard. I know because I've done it, right? I dropped out of college and I wasn't living with my parents anymore. I moved out when I was 18. I had some tough times. I'm going to be real with you, It hasn't always been easy over the years. But the reason I can smile about this now, the reason I can look back at this and kind of reminisce almost, is because they made me who I am. And I could have avoided all of that if I had just kept studying something that I wasn't supposed to be studying and kept going down a road that I didn't really want to go down, following something that just wasn't my purpose at the end of the day. But I'd always choose the hard way, the hard path. I'd always prefer that to taking the easy road that leads nowhere. It's at the end of the day, changing your life in major ways is still better than complaining about the same thing for the rest of your life. You can you can do the hard work. You can fight the boss 50 times until you realize this is how I beat him. Or you can avoid the boss and stay in the starter area forever. But the starter area does get kind of boring. And it's really not that awesome, not that epic. Is that the kind of life you want to live? I don't think so. And, I think you probably know as well that it isn't. Most of you guys watching this, I'm assuming it's mostly guys. Shout out to any girls watching this, but I think those are probably far and few in between. Have a dream, a purpose, something they strive for, something that motivates them. And, maybe you've been so enveloped in the world around you that you've just lost sight of it. This was the case for me. In my late teens, going towards early adulthood, I had become so engrossed in my social life, in what everyone else was kind of doing, that I lost sight of the fact that I actually had a very good feeling or a very good idea of what I wanted to do and what I felt like I was supposed to do. And it took me, getting into university and starting to study for this degree that I did not care about at all to realize, dude, what are you doing here? This isn't what you're supposed to be doing. maybe you've never really managed to put your finger on, because life has just been dragging you along, and you've been so involved in your social life, so involved in other people, so involved in all of these flashy things the world has to offer, that even though you've got like this feeling, this sense of where you should be going, this idea of sort of a general direction, maybe maybe roughly what interests you and what you are really driven by, but perhaps you have always been so busy with random stuff that you've never really specifically identified what your purpose is. I'm telling you right now, you can only rekindle that dream, find that purpose, and set it as your actual long-term goal again, to follow that purpose, to follow that path that you should be following. You can only rediscover what was lost, or find what you always kind of knew was there, if you take responsibility. No one is going to do it for you. Trust me. Chances are life isn't going to just give you what you want. There are very few people who are actually extremely lucky in life, and they do nothing and they work for nothing and they still get a lot of stuff. And even then, if you've ever played a video game on easy mode, or used cheats, I think most of you know it gets boring very quickly, because you earned none of it. And so it's just worthless. It doesn't mean that much to you, because it's not connected to all of those struggles and all of that hard work that you would have had to put in if you had actually gone the real route. You have to do the hard work and take what you want. Now, this video might have surprised you. It was a little more about personal philosophy, whereas the last two were obviously fitness related. Philosophy is something I'm very interested in. Different kinds of philosophy, but specifically the last couple of years I've become quite interested in applying aspects of philosophy, and both secular philosophy and also a lot of the philosophical thoughts in religious texts of various different religions, to real life, and sort of utilizing all of these thoughts that people have had over the centuries to create a very functional day-to-day life. So this is definitely something I'm going to talk about more in the future. What I talked about in this video is, in my opinion, one of the most valuable lessons of Stoic philosophy. And it's very widely applicable, obviously. It's generally just very useful. Once you know this is something you can always remind yourself of, even if you veer off the path, right? You can always come back. You can always remind yourself of this, and it's always going to be a great rediscovery and a great way for you to, get back on track. So this was what I wanted to talk about first. If you enjoyed listening to me ramble about people complaining about their problems, if you got something out of this video, if you learned something, if this felt valuable to you, if you found it interesting, be sure to leave a like. I would appreciate that very much. Also, if you want to see where this goes in the future, if you want to hear some more thoughts on philosophy, me talk about kind of the things I've read up on, the things I've put into practice in my own life, really, go ahead and subscribe. And if you do, again, as I said in the previous two videos, activate the notification bell, I guess. I'm not really sure what that does or if that does anything, but why not do it anyways if you subscribe? And yeah, if you have any questions about any of this, if you're curious about something, if you have suggestions or questions regarding, topics that you maybe want to hear me talk about, if this video made you think about something that you're curious about and maybe you would like to hear my thoughts on it, go ahead and let me know in the comments. I'm always happy to answer questions or to, engage with the stuff that people suggest to me. And yeah, I guess that's it. I hope the lighting wasn't too terrible. And I guess I'll see you around. Or, yeah, maybe not. We'll see.